kindergarten and first grade ornithologists. We're going to start a new project today. We are going to start learning about the birds that live here in our own city. Some of you probably know the names of some birds in the world, like maybe you've heard of a flamingo or a parakeet or maybe an ostrich or a penguin. But do you know the names of the birds that live in your own backyard? Or the birds you might see when you go out for a walk in your neighborhood or to your local park and look up in a tree? Do you know their names? They're kind of your neighbors because they live right around you. So don't you think it'd be polite and smart as a scientist to know their names? I think it would be. So we're going to spend the next few science classes learning the names of the different birds in our own city, the common birds of Seattle. And we're going to spend some time figuring out how to identify them with our sense of sight. What do they look like? But also with another sense. What other sense do you think we could use to help us figure out which bird is which? Do you think we could usually get close enough to smell the bird? Excuse me, Mr. Bird, can I smell you? No, I don't think that would work. How about touching the bird? When you walk towards a bird in the park, does it usually let you get close enough to just touch it? Can I feel you? Are you a crow or are you a sparrow? No, birds don't usually let you touch them either. So what is the other sense we could use? Taste. We could taste a bird. No, that would be not very safe because sometimes birds have germs on them. And I don't think the bird would like that very much. Imagine if someone just walked up to you at the park and licked you. No, I don't think we can use our sense of touch, our sense of smell, or our sense of taste. So what's the other sense we can use besides our sense of sight to tell which bird is which? I'll give you a hint. Our sense of hearing, exactly. You probably have been hearing all sorts of bird calls out in the neighborhood lately, and maybe even through your window and in your backyard, because the birds are getting especially active for springtime. So during the next few science lesson videos at home, I'm going to be teaching you some ways to tell the birds that you see in Seattle apart from each other from your sense of sight, what they look like, and your sense of hearing, what they sound like. And then we're going to do a really fun project where we count all of the different birds we see and we figure out which types of birds do we have the most of, which types do we not have very many of. But before we start that project, we have to learn which bird is which and what their names are. Who are these bird neighbors? So you might have seen that you have a official Perkins Seattle Bird Tracker in the bag that your family picked up from school last week. And the birds that we're going to learn about are in this book. There's pictures, there's names, and so I'm going to teach you a little bit in this video about the different types of birds that you might see. We're going to go one by one through the birds, and we're going to learn how to recognize the marks on their bodies. That's called their attributes, their physical attributes, and also some of their sounds and behavior. So you could recognize what bird they are based on what they're doing and where they live. So here we go. We're going to start with this bird coming up next. Here is our first bird. Do you recognize this bird? It's one that we actually got to see in science class a few weeks ago. But the one that we looked at was missing some of its feathers and very dried up because it was mummified. It was a mummy bird, but you still might recognize some of the feathers. This one is the northern flicker. So the northern flicker is a really cool bird that I've been seeing a lot of in my neighborhood these days. Maybe you have too. I'm going to ask you a few questions about each bird, and I want you to try to respond out loud. Even though I can't hear you from my video, I want you to practice using your scientist eyes to notice some things about the bird that would help you recognize it if you saw this out in your neighborhood. So, what do you see? What kinds of markings do you see on this bird's body? Or what other attributes, like parts of its body, do you notice that would help you figure out that this is the northern flicker? I'll give you some thinking time. Look at the picture. Hmm. Did you notice the spots all over its feathers? That has these polka dot spots on its belly and breast, and it has more of these little stripy spots on its back. Did you notice those? What else did you notice? Did you also notice the little red patch on the back of its head? Some of them have it and some of them don't, but sometimes that's a good thing to notice for the flicker. And oh, you also noticed the black mark on its face? That's a good one too. Now, did anyone look close enough to look at the shape of the beak? That's a really helpful sign too, because remember, beaks help us tell birds apart because each bird has a special beak for what it eats, a special adaptation, that's called, something that helps it survive. So, what do you think that the northern flicker eats? This beak looks pretty long, but not as long as a hummingbird. It looks pretty thick and strong, and it's pretty skinny. What do you think it does with this beak? If you said pound into wood to get little bugs out from the bark, you're right. The flicker is kind of like a woodpecker. They're related, in fact. The flicker goes around and pecks on trees, especially rotting trees, and tries to find little worms and beetles and bugs inside to gobble up for dinner. And that also uses its beak, that strong, hammering beak, for something else. Let me show you a video because now is the time we're going to use our sense of hearing to think about clues that might tell us a northern flicker is nearby if we just hear it. Let's get this video running. First, you'll hear the call of the northern flicker, and then you'll hear something else, maybe a drumming with its beak. So listen really closely. And you can see in this video, before I even press play, we can't see the flicker very well. And that might be true in your neighborhood too. But if you listen, you still might know there's a flicker, and then you can look and say, oh, there it is. So here, listen to this. Let me make sure my volume's turned up so you can hear it. Keep listening. Did you hear the call? The call almost sounds like shrieking and laughing put together, like shriek laughing. And then did you also listen closely enough to hear the drumming? That's what the male, the boy, flickers do in the springtime, because when they drum on something hard, like a branch, like in this video, or sometimes someone's chimney, They find something hard to drum on, and that drumming spreads out across the neighborhood, and the female birds, the girl birds, can hear it, and they can say, oh, there's a male bird. Maybe I should choose him to be the daddy for my eggs. And it also tells the other male birds, hey, this is my territory. This is my area. Let me take over. Let me have the food here. Let me maybe get the mommy birds here. So the drumming is like the male bird's announcement to all the female birds that he might make a good daddy bird. And it's also an announcement to the other male birds that he wants that area all to himself. So the shrieking laughter of the flicker's call is one way to tell there's a flicker nearby, and that drumming, drum, 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 drum. I know that sometimes these flickers drum on my neighbor's chimney, so it's kind of a funny thing to listen for. So keep your eyes peeled and your ears listening for a northern flicker. Can you find the northern flicker in your Seattle bird tracker? Look through the pictures and see which one looks kind of similar to the flicker that you just learned about. It might be a different picture than the one I showed you. So you'll have to look for some of those same markings. If you found this page at the very beginning, that's the northern flicker. Good job. Don't put anything in this box yet. Don't write anything. Don't draw anything. I just want you to realize that that's the northern flicker page, and we're going to use this book later on a different day for our bird tracking project. But we have a few more birds in this book to learn about before we're ready for that project. So let's go to the next bird. Here is our next bird, the rock pigeon. What do you notice about the rock pigeon's body that would help you use your sense of sight to tell that it's the rock pigeon and not some other bird? What colors do you see? What markings do you see? What special shaped body parts do you see? Did you notice that it has mostly the color gray on it? It has light gray down on the main part of its body and its breast. It has medium gray up by its head and on its tail feathers. And it has dark gray and black stripes and markings on some of its wings and tail too. So a lot of the rock pigeon's body is gray. But what parts are not gray? Do you see the rainbow colors on its neck? Rock pigeons are famous for having different shimmery colors on their neck. Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're blues, and sometimes they're even purples and pinks. It depends on the rock pigeon. They're all a little different, but they're really beautiful with those shimmery rainbow colors. Sometimes you can see them flash more if they're in a certain light, and sometimes they're hard to see, but they always have a little shimmery color on their neck. And then they also usually have a brighter color eye, like an orange eye, and brighter colored feet, like pink or red feet. But the rest of their body is kind of some sort of shade of gray and black. And they have a short little beak that's mostly just for picking up little scraps and crumbs of things left by other animals and left by people too. So let's watch a video to learn more about the rock pigeon's behavior. Here it is. Zoe, that's not the rock pigeon. That's the rock and roll pigeon. That pigeon is sure rocking out. That's not the real rock pigeon. Silly Zoe. But it is kind of fun, right? Maybe we should have a mini dance party break with the rock and roll pigeon before we watch the real rock pigeon video. Let's do it, just for a little bit. Let's see if we can do the same moves as the rock and roll pigeon, or you can make up your own. Let's go. I'm gonna rewind it a little bit so we can start from the beginning. Ready? Here we go. That's a hard one. Whew, that was fun. But we should get back to science class, huh? And watch the real rock pigeon video now. All right, here's the real rock pigeon. Let's see what the rock pigeon looks like. And even from before we start the video, you can tell that the rock pigeon is a kind of a medium to large size bird. It's about this big. So let's see what the rock pigeon looks like. It's hanging out on the roof. That's one of the places they really like to hang out. It kind of wobbles its head a little bit, looks kind of curious. And often rock pigeons hang out with a lot of their other friends and family. They either hang out on the wires, or they fly together, or they hang out on a roof together. So not always, but sometimes you'll see rock pigeons hanging out with big groups of other rock pigeons. Now, here is the rock pigeon's call so you can hear what it sounds like. This video doesn't show you the pigeon moving, it just shows you a picture, and this picture really shows the beautiful rainbow colors in this one's neck, huh? But it just shows you a picture and plays the sound, so listen really well with your sense of hearing so you can hear it. Here we go. Ooh, let's hear that again. Let's do it one more time. Did you hear that? That was almost like a cooing and a gurgling sound. Can you make that same sound? Kind of like in the back of your throat a little bit. I'm not very good at it, but I'm still practicing. How about you practice too? Now, can you find the rock pigeon in your bird tracker book? Remember, the picture might be a different one than I showed you on my screen in the video. So make sure you look for those gray markings and the rainbow neck feathers and all of the shape of the rock pigeon that you learned about. Let's look through our book together. Is that the rock pigeon or that one? No. You look in your book while I look in mine. I found it. Did you find it too? If you found the page that looks like this, you found the right bird. That's the rock pigeon. And that is the end of today's Seattle Birds with Zoe show. So we are going to learn about some more birds next time. But for now, while you're looking out your window or in your backyard or on a walk with your family, keep your eyes and ears peeled for the flicker and the rock pigeon. Remember, the flicker sound is like that shrieking laughter. And the rock pigeon has more of that cooing, gurgling. So listen for those noises. Keep your eyes out for what they look like. But if you see them, don't write anything in your book yet. Now is just practice time to see if you can start identifying these two birds, the northern flicker and the rock pigeon, in the wild. And stay tuned for tomorrow's episode of More Birds of Seattle with me, Zoe. Bye.